Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all enjoying lunch. Looks like there's still a lot of food over there, so if you want to load your plates one more time before we get started with the afternoon speaker. I'm Renee Lagrade. Y'all met me earlier, and it looks like everybody from the symposium is here right now, right? Is there anyone who wasn't at the symposium? Darn it, there's always one. So rather than going and giving another really lengthy introduction to Donovan, Shannon suggested I just keep it short and cut to the chase so that you would have plenty of time to speak. So thank you, Donovan, for your wonderful conversation with Shannon a few minutes ago over at the Sandoz Center. And now I'd like to say thank you again for being available to come give the lunch presentation. Really looking forward to this, because I always do exactly what Shannon tells me to do. We are also really quite pleased that your talk is on the Battle of the Little Bighorn, because Volume 2 of the Sandoz series will be coming out 1 year from now. We have all the manuscript in, and it is also on the Battle of the Little Bighorn. So 6 essays that take very innovative looks at the battle through very different perspectives. But that's just as a way to promote the volume and to help introduce you. So thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to see you back again. And a couple things I wanted to mention also. I didn't mention the Little Bighorn book of Mary Sandoz, but very interesting book. And I've always been a collector of stuff, so I kind of looked in my files and that, and so what I had, and so I did bring this along. I got a table up here, some of my books, and the artifacts over there are from northern Nebraska and spear points, and I got those a long time ago when I was a kid at a ranch auction. So they're right in the area of where our family had camps. Also told Shannon about this. I brought in a book here, and there's an article in here. Mary was at a symposium herself in, I think it was Wisconsin, and the whole article is in here with the program from back in the day, and then she gave a presentation, and this is her signature on here. I guess she was in this room, English 101, Tuesdays and Thursdays, room 73. And the article is pretty extensive in here from the city itself about the conference, and the conference program is in here, and then it's signed. It says, warm regards, Helen Stauffer. So, she did this. And then I have one signed by Miss Sandoz also, and I didn't bring that one. I was kind of in a rush, but I did bring that to the center one time, and I was pretty sure it was her signature because it was in the fountain ink, and kind of that light blue color, and pretty unique, looking signature. But I checked with them, and yeah, they said, yep, that's definitely hers. But I think they see quite a few of those, so they, we're very familiar with that. Also have some other information here. I talked about the rare Indigenous eyewitness account of the Battle of Little Bighorn found in Ontario, and that's the letter I was talking about that was written in foreign language and verified that that's the one was returned to Tawa Dushno. So that whole story is in there. And any other things I'll have down at my table here. This one is not down there yet, but there were a couple famous drawings back in the day, paintings of the battle, and I know you've seen these, and they look pretty stereotypical, like Custer's always the last one down, and with his often with his saber, which most of the sabers were left behind, at Fort Abraham Lincoln. And up on the Custer Hill, there were two classic ones. But this one by Paxton, along with that, with the research of when he did this back in the early 1900s, he meticulously researched characters. So I have another one with the numbers on each person of who they are. So they really are certain people. So there's certain soldiers are identified in there. And for instance, right behind Custer here is Hump. And right over here is Crazy Horse. And so a lot of people, anyway, didn't know. They just thought, well, he's just drawing, different images. But he really did talk to other natives. And then this is like a drawing of it here with the numbers, the code, so you can find that. So I talked about winter counts as well. I also have the book here, The Year the Stars Fell, is full of winter counts from the Smithsonian. So that's the ones that they possess. So a lot can be learned from all of that. So with the information that I have here, the Little Bighorn, a couple of the new things that's new there. Don't have time to even tell you all the different aspects of the battle. There's so many different things and books written about that, and a lot of people want to know, what kind of bullets were used and how many were fired and stuff like that. But there is individual research. You could spend a whole program just on that. But I think one of the things that really rewrote the book or rewrote history and shed more light on it was the archaeological work after the fire in the early 80s, around 1983. And the fire, broke out there. And at first, they thought, what a terrible thing. But then they decided to go over that with, shoulder to shoulder with metal detectors. And they found a lot of things, there that, established skirmish lines and where people fired from and what kind of weaponry was used from the bullets. They even matched up some of the shell casings with then where the bullet ended up, things like that. So, that's beyond anything that we ever heard about that. And it didn't really appear in the winter counts either, because that was more recent history, and people feared repercussion, talking about too much of this back in the early days, say late 1800s and early 1900s. And my grandfather, who I mentioned, Hump, was interviewed by Walter Camp. And so, and Camp actually said that he liked his account as well or better than all the people that he talked to. But I can read through that, and they also interviewed other family members who told basically the same thing, but when they were real pressed for specifics, like maybe names, they wouldn't give that out because, like I said, they feared repercussion. And so they would change the subject. So it's kind of interesting in interviews, they change the subject, well, I do know it was a pretty warm day and the sun was kind of high, but and there were a few clouds, but not too many. And, and then they'll come back and focus on a specific question, and they'll talk a little bit, but then, well, yeah, there were a few clouds, it's like, okay, change the subject. I'm uncomfortable with answering that. They didn't say that. So, one of the Cheyenne referred to this incident on the Rosebud. All of this is like with my college, talking about resources and going places to visit. I can go 15 minutes and I'm over to the Fort Phil Kearny site of the Fetterman fight and the Wagon Box fight. And it's about 30, 40 minutes up to the Rosebud, this site here, and it's about 50 minutes into the Battle of the Little Bighorn site, about 50 minutes into the Dull Knife site, and then the three forts that were established there along the Bozeman Trail were Fort C.F. Smith, Fort Phil Kearny, and Fort Reno, all along the Bozeman Trail. And so I go out there also. The Fort Reno is over east of KC, Wyoming, about 30 miles, and about 30 miles the other direction to the west is into the Dull Knife battle site. Then up at Fort Phil Kearny, that's right at Story, south of Sheridan, and then C.F. Smith is up kind of southwest of Lodgegrass, Montana, just into Montana. So you have those three forts spread out along there. And this would precede the Little Bighorn from June 17th, 1876. So right in Sheridan itself, I can go down to the park. I mean, we have, not to mention, buffalo jumps all around, right? One right in town there, where they stampeded buffalo off cliffs, and a lot of archaeological work done by Dr. George Frism, was a state archaeologist of Wyoming, just passed a couple years ago, and he wrote extensively and studied on all these sites. Right at the college, we have artifacts right there in the college from those sites. But right in the camp there. The maps show some of the area that I'm talking about right here, and we're right down here. Here's Fort Robinson. So there's the Dull Knife and the Wagon Box, Fetterman, the Rosebud over here, Little Bighorn, and Sheridan's over in this area here. But the famous Camp Cloud Peak was right in Sheridan, and that's where General Crook set up his headquarters there on the Goose River. There's a Big Goose and Little Goose runs through town. And what that was really was a big arms buildup in preparation for what would become some of these wars. So that's kind of what's going on. A lot of the arms are coming from down at Fort Phil to Laramie up to Reno, and then wagon trains coming into there. So after the big buildup, then the three-pronged attack is coming in. So Custer is coming from Fort Abraham Lincoln, and then Crook down here, and then another contingent. We're up here at Fort Ellis in Montana, and eventually they would all come together at the Little Bighorn is where people would be found. And just some other details about that is that Crook had to wait for some of his scouts that were coming from over here, like some of the Shoshone and some of them, to join him, and then he's gonna go in there. So he comes in to up to the Rosebud site, and they'll have a pretty big battle over there most of the day, and they'll retreat. They'll come back to Sheridan to the Camp Cloud Peak, and so that's been a lot of controversy about all that, because he was supposed to meet up with Custer, days later on June 25th. So he has about 1,000 men, and some of those scouts, probably about 1,400 people who are supposed to be at the battle, itself. And so battle happens, and one value of all this too is not only our winter counts that I use, but there's a lot of soldier diaries and stuff, and there's newspaper correspondents who travel, with some of these people, keeping day-to-day records. So we always know a lot of the soldier side, a lot more of that than the native side. I mean, we get the soldiers that, they went there, they went to West Point, they were in this Civil War battle, their father was Civil War vet, all kinds of stuff. And then for the native side, what you get for all of this is Red Cloud's War. Okay, we got them covered. We told the native side of it right there. And once Red Cloud surrenders, the person who will be left out there is Sitting Bull. So then it's Sitting Bull, and Warriors. So most of the time they have no idea of the mixture of bands that they're encountering here. And what they're encountering with our group, our family, is Lakota and Cheyenne. I might not have mentioned that I'm one half Cheyenne. And the wives of Hump were from Morning Star, were from the Dull Knife family. So that's the connection there that will come into play here later in this presentation. So anyway, they go back to the Cloud Peak camp, and then, okay, there, what's going on in the diary? We look back, Little Bighorn happens, No Crook shows up. What's he doing? The diary says, oh, I'm over here where Bighorn is right south of Sheridan. Over here I'm fishing. The fishing is awesome, it's great, we're having a wonderful time. Whoops, Custer's getting killed right then. So some people wonder, well, what would have happened, with over 1,000 more people, the outcome. And so our people say, well, it would have just taken a little bit longer, a few more minutes, but who knows. So our people, the Cheyenne, always refer to this. My chapter in my unpublished book is called The Battle Where Sister Saved Her Brother. And that's from the Cheyenne. And when this man looked like he was facing certain death, a woman came rode over the hill right down through the middle of where the main battle is today. This is a buffalo jump up there. She kind of come in to the west, rode in. Finest regalia, so there's this drawing that was created for that. Soldiers are all shooting, and she sweeps down and rescues, it's her brother, and saves him. So that's how the Cheyenne refer to this battle. Like Rosebud, see, that's a modern name for the creek. And then my students are totally confused because of Rosebud Reservation. It's like, what? Now you're talking Montana? But anyway, brothers over here, he just clamped onto the side. His arm is across here, and his carbine is right there, and his face is right there. Just his face is peeking out that side. And then away they went over the hill, and he saved him. And I said they got over to safety, and not a high five going on, yes. And they made it. So that's how that story is. There's a story and explanation, for all of that. So this shows the three-pronged attack here coming from Fort Lincoln, south of Mandan. Out here, Terry Custer column, and then Gibbon column coming from Fort Ellis, which I mentioned this way, and then Crook, who doesn't show up. So I guess I should back up here to this here. The big news up there for all of you is that the visitor center is coming down in a few weeks. They're going to start tearing it down and dismantling that. And for a long time, it was needed to have a bigger facility, and just a fraction of the artifacts and things are there. So they always needed the money part, and I'm pretty sure it was a woman from Sheridan just put the money up. It's like, okay, you need a center, here you go. And so anyway, that'll be completely dismantled by this winter. And so this is still sitting there back in the corner. One side they have all of the soldier side right here, if you go in the museum there. And it's got Custer, and all of the main players on that side. And then this is on our side. This is the native side here, usually Sitting Bull, who predicted the victory. And they had the Sundance, which foretold soldiers falling into camp, and they predicted a big victory. It happened over in the area of the Rosebud prior. So he's often, although he's a medicine man, he was not a veteran of like the battle fighting and that. In fact, his job was to get the women and children to safety as the attack came. And this is Hull, my great-great-grandfather here. I have an original picture of this. He was photographed by L.A. Huffman, the famous photographer from Miles City. Because see, that's where that Tongue River cantonment was, up there by Miles City. where he surrendered. And the actual picture, I showed him up there, this is cropped. So the real picture, which may be in here somewhere, has his 2 Cheyenne wives next to him. And then he's holding a war club that was used. He used that in the battle, and he's seated, and the one wife is standing here, the sister, and then my great-great-grandmother, her sister, is seated next to him, and he's sitting down in a chair, and on his knee is a big flat brim hat, big letters, it says hump on there, as if you didn't know who he was. So Crazy Horse, a nice little drawing of him because of no proven picture. So these are some Red Horse Minikoju drew images of the battle later that were very helpful. And PZ, or Gall, from the Hunkpapa was very prominent there. And Rain in the Face were some of those. And there were also women involved. It was important that women also served and be recognized. So I give credit to the women also in my book. One of the women, after the battle was all over, she wrote, she was from Hunkpapa, a moving robe woman. And she said, I seen the men of our nation circling the hill. The soldiers were all gone. We're laying there. And she said, I seen Gall, I seen Crazy Horse, Hump, Rain in the Face, and the man Crow-King had the 7th Cavalry banner. They were going in a circle around there, just parading. That was the final scene there. And I want to get this out too before you all get mad at me for us being victorious in all of these battles. That 50% of American Indians are veterans of U.S. wars, and no ethnic group in America comes anywhere close to that. We serve in the highest numbers, and that started with World War I and continues to this day. I gave a talk over, been to like Fort Knox and overseas and places like that, and gave that. When I was first at Fort Knox, that was a long time ago, and CNN covered that, and the stats were coming. That night I was in my quarters, they put me in, and the stats were coming right across on the news there. And so today, I actually heard the president last summer making statements, about veterans or whatever, and my very exactly quoted, stats and sentence came out of his mouth. So I said, well, if you talk about this history long enough, it catches on, and I'm not saying anything about political parties. That's a whole nother battle, I'd say. So anyway, I'm real proud of this. Every time I go into the museum, we go over and we stand, by this, and our people get our pictures, and usually creates a big photo session. We're talking about Shannon's books, or our book is at the Little Bighorn, and mine, which I have available over here, are all there side by side, and every time I go in there, it creates a big unscheduled book signing, and I'll sign a bunch of books, stacked about this high, and I come back, 2 weeks later, and they'll say, oh, sign our books here. And I say, we're just here, I signed all them. No, that's a whole other batch there, We got rid of all those. So this is Crook's camp, very well depicted. Like Sheridan is right here, the library is right here. This is the Bighorns here, and I actually have a Harper's Weekly of the Shoshone Scouts coming right off the steep hill here to join them, and they're actually arriving right here, and this is the order, but a big arms buildup, and then the layout here. So this will lead next to the Little Bighorn battle itself. They'll find a large camp. The Crow Scouts will locate those over at on one of the hills there, they observed a lot of pony dust of the large herds, of which they're easily, it sounds like a large number, but there could have been up to 10,000 horses that were grazing over in that area, because the headmen had very large herds. So it's over, if you've been going up to 12th, and the battlefield is off to your right side, then there's the town of Gary Owen is right there in the south. But it was right west of Gary Owen is where all those were, that herd was grazing. And so, of course, Custer will split his command again into, he'll send Reno to the south area. And I've wrote some of this part here. This is the part from the Rosebud on their trek through here, this valley. They rode right through here, and crows are that tell the story today because they have land in that area, and Crow Reservation is there. So they know that as they came over towards the Little Bighorn, Custer had his plans changed because, well, first of all, one of the wagons that had some of the hardtack and food on it, they told that they had lost some stuff fell off, some bags. And the officer said, "You go right back there and get that right now, because there's the enemy in the area, and they'll detect that and see that." So they went back to the area, and when they got there, the enemy was eating that. Some of the warriors, they took off on a run. So then that's the first point they knew that they're going to be discovered and known. And so that pushes the clock up by one day. They'll decide to go in. And so this is the Little Bighorn River itself. Looks just like that. Our camps were down in this area of the Minicoju. And it's called Minicoju Ford today. It's a real accessible place as far as the river going back and forth this way, and the others are just the route over to that. These are some of the markers that were actually located. They were once lost. This is out where Reno is told to attack the south end. So he'll attack the south end, and then Benteen will go further to the south to search for enemy, and he won't find anybody. He'll eventually come back and find Reno engaged on that south end. Meanwhile, Custer has went to the north on the ridge, and last they seen of him, he had a hat. He waved a white hat down below, and they noticed that. And then so that's where kind of the mystery begins on the non-Indian side, was what all happened after that. But I don't think it's a big mystery as much as people say it is, because our people have a lot of accounts of it and where they were, but just piece that all together. But it seems more like it has to be told from another culture's side or something to really be the real deal or something, because they want to listen maybe to the oral accounts or the drawings. And the markers were rediscovered. That's on the Reno attack. So this is where Reno comes in on the south end, and there were about 3 people. They had markers for them, and then they lost it in the farmer's field. Then the farmer found them later, so they marked them again. So these are some of the drawings from the native side here. And this is the last stand hill here. So then what we've been talking about here's the Little Bighorn River, and the camps are down in here. A lot of the order, they say, of soldiers and that isn't always just where the people were, because when they visited like this, they only come together for Sundance. Greatest religious gathering, and never that many people in one place. So when in my writing, I say Custer came in on the biggest religious gathering of the year, is really what was going on. And because the area couldn't sustain large, herds of horses and people like that, they could only stay a while. They had to go break up into bands and leave. But for Sundance, see, it starts on the solstice, June 21st, and it goes 4 days, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Custer comes in, it's the 25th, and the camps are breaking up. See, they're moving. They're all disbanding and leaving. And he speeds everything up, like I said, and says, let's go on in. They're getting away. You know, the teepees are coming down, the travois are leaving. So everything is so hurry, hurry, hurry up. And, you know, I feel sorry for those horses, those soldier horses, for that march of, from the Rosebud clear over, you know, say you got, you know, 30 miles there, and then they hit that, and then everything's moved forward by a day, and a race, you know, and those horses had to be so wore out and exhausted, you know. So our camps were up in here by the Cheyenne. This is Minikoju Ford, which is kind of flat right here. Today there's a reenactment of the Reelberg family right in that area. And then when Custer comes in on the end over here from the Rosebud, comes across, this is looking north this way, this is where Reno will come in and make his attack, and every fourth man will hold the horses, and they'll skirmish there. And the way of fighting was much different. It's like Civil War, you know, you line up, line by line, and men by men, and shoot and fire, and then you move forward and hold another line. Well, that didn't fit or work with the natives, because ours was more circular, and they described the great horsemanship, you know, circling and hanging on the side of a horse, just like the one who was rescued there, you know, by a sister, and it's all over the horse. And warriors didn't have saddles, you know, they used sinew and that. Women had saddles, but they were the best horsemen that the soldiers had ever seen. Pretty soon you get going in a circle like that, you know, and everything gets, you know, confusing and out of the order. So eventually they're after all these horses here. That's always the prize, even if it's an enemy tribe, get those horses. So that's what they're doing, is routing those horses. And then the horses will begin to stampede right into the camp itself. The handlers cannot hold those. And there goes the ammunition, because the saddlebags are full of the ammunition. Reno will make a decision to retreat back up to this hill up here. So several are killed leaving retreat. So they come in here. These arrows show that retreat, and some hid in these trees here, and even through the whole battle into the next day, they didn't know that they were in those trees. But most of them came up here, and it was described as about 100 degrees that day, hot, and there's no trees up here, so they're like sitting ducks. This other area, that shows the last stand hill. With our family, this chapter of my book is called The Music of the Bugles, because our family was down in this area, and I mentioned the music of the bugles. Our women were up on the top picking teamsilla and prairie turnip, and that's when they heard the sound of the bugles of the soldiers, and they ran screaming back to the camp. That was the first that our group knew that it was soldiers were in the area of attack. So immediately, once they alerted, Crazy Horse and Hump were down here in this area here, and they crossed over here and went down along this ridge, and they got in on just the ending of the Reno fight, because the Reno fight only lasted about 20 minutes, and he's overrun and dug in up on top. And so they were all pointing to the north. They said, "More up there, you knocked me, you know, go up out to the north, there's soldiers going that way. So they're making kind of like inroads. This is very steep here to check and see where they're at and back, because this is the real traversable area here. Go up here and see where they are. They're moving this way. And then up here at Calhoun Hill, the last stand hill is just right here. That's where some of the real fierce fighting took place that turned the tide in the battle. And some of that is stuff I could rewrite, and not rewrite, but I can add more to the history of what happened. Yeah, if we could back up there a little bit. So back to Calhoun Hill. So some of that fits in with Walter Camp's story too. He talked to Hump about that. But what was known about that area was some of the fiercest fighting took place, which changed a lot of the outcome title, of the battle time. So Hump and Crazy Horse and others had split the column up on the top of that hill, and that's described quite a bit. And with the Crazy Horse writings, they rode right through. They talked about how the bullets couldn't touch him, and he turned back around and came back through. And the soldiers are all up there on the top of the ridge at Calhoun Hill, and they're squatted down, aiming. And they, as Hump comes up, they shoot him in the knee, and the bullet travels all the way up his leg and exits out his hip, and the horse jumps into the air and falls over backwards. So he's laying there partially pinned in that. And so with the Crazy Horse people too, it all fits with the Crazy Horse and others made a corridor around Hump there to protect him while they're bringing another horse. And he's, getting his, collecting himself and all that. And the other one, Hump's brother there, his name is Little Crow. And he's not the Little Crow from Minnesota history. But anyway, they brought another horse. And the other thing that fits in chronologically right around this time is the man, Lane Whiteman. He was in the picture of the participants there. He's a famous Cheyenne chief. And Hump's brother, Little Crow, accidentally killed him right around that time. And they thought he was a Rickeraw scout. He had a soldier jacket and his hair was loose. So his marker was put up there. It was in the wrong place for quite a few decades. And then they marked those with cards like rock, our people, and then they go back, and then the ranger superintendent has those removed, and then they come back, here's those rocks again. So they finally told them what those were for, so now they leave them alone. But anyway, they know the exact site. So that happens within minutes of with the history. And then from there over, like looking here would be like on Calhoun Hill, and then over to Last Stand Hill is just kind of how now people are running at that time. Many have lost their horses or some were wounded on Calhoun Hill. And that's where today you find a lot of the markers, soldier markers, which aren't all in the exact place, but a lot of art proliferation of markers all the way to that hill. And the way our people described it in family was they likened it to the buffalo hunt, where you would break off the herd, into smaller groups, and that's what they were doing, how they described with the soldiers. They would separate them and split them off like that. Number one thing is to go for the horses itself. So later then, the work would continue over at Last Stand Hill, and again, the fire that happened rewrote a lot of the story. I know some of the elders used to say, some of the Cheyenne used to say they fought down by the current visitor center that they're taking down. That's why they're going to move that down by the highway, because it's on, the artifact stuff there. But historians wouldn't believe them. They said, no, I don't believe that. It all ended at Last Stand Hill. Well, after the fire, they found out, yeah, those people knew what they were talking about. There was fighting and skirmish down at the visitor center where that is, and then a lot more of a last rush up to the last stand hill. And then in the final minutes, there was some desperation, like they went off from last stand hill, a few of them down in what's called Deep Ravine today, which is to the southwest of the hill. And when they got down there, that's like a hornet's nest. Some of the younger ones, boys in that, who had been holding fresh horses and water in case, as that was needed, that was their job, not to be in the battle itself. Well, those people that fled came right down into that group there. So they're still looking for those bodies. There's a book called the E Troop. They described, the natives described those units by color of their horses. A lot of them were gray horses. So there's still a mystery today, and they're still looking for that. I was at a archaeological, actually it was this Fox was over there that wrote the book on after the fire. But we just crossed paths at the Rosebud, and they were down there looking for bodies that were never found from where Crook set up his command. And they were in the right area, and while I was there, I actually helped. It was really hot. I felt sorry for his guy that was doing all the digging, and it was a hot day. I said, I'll take that shovel for a while. Here we found three pieces of the same pistol right there, an old pistol. So it had a serial number on it too, so they were taking that up to Billings to see, more about that type of stuff. But that's what it is about. It's like pieces and pieces and picking up. So let's go forward here. We can, Shannon. I want to talk about back up to the people. Okay, here's Sitting Bull here, and this is Little Wolf and Dull Knife there, and there's the original picture I was telling you of Hump with his hat and the club, and my great grandmother is to his left, and then our man, and he wasn't at the particular battle, but that's Touch the Cloud, who was known for his height, and he took care of Crazy Horse down here when he was stabbed on the parade ground over here. And when he surrendered, his agency was the Spotted Tail Agency, although he's Mini-Kosher. So he's a first cousin. We have 7-footers in our family still today from that line. And so with these surrenders, then this will, after the battle happens, there will be 5 surrenders from our family, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. Okay, this is that's Moving Road Woman who was mentioned, and these are Rick scouts here, and Comanche, the well-known horse that survived the battle that came back. They always got that confused. I always tried to say that was Custer's, but it wasn't his. That one is on display still down at Kansas, the university. You might know that. Let's go to the next one. And then Custer. I spoke over at the Custer Week in Monroe, Michigan. So they have an annual Custer Week. All the Custer fans and big blowout. So I was going to be keynote speaker one year. So I was kind of wondering what would happen to me, there. Really nice people, And I even came back with a bow that the Custers are still there. I spoke in an old theater right on Main Street, and right across the street was a boot shop that was still going. It was owned by some of the Custer relatives. The last day I was there, some of the Custer family came in on the farm and gave me a bow from out here. They don't know whose it is, but when the widows went back from Fort Abraham Lincoln, they took stuff with them, and they said this bow belongs out there with you guys. And so really nice people. And gory, this is kind of like gory details. Godfrey, he was one of the commanders. stuff like Wooden Lake, the Cheyenne, he had great accounts, you know, of names. I like those names they mentioned because, like I said, you know, this is like a Sitting Bull and Warriors show here, and it wasn't just that. But Wooden Lake said he got an unusual scalp that day, and it was actually his Godfrey's sideburns was what he got, and were hanging on his belt. Next one, that's the famous message to Benteen. Bring packs, be quick, bring packs. He said that twice. It had all the ammo. That was the last message. One of the guidance here, one of those was, there were several that they had. So it's more stuff like this. Let's go to the next one. That will maybe be in the news center. Same way here. Let's go to the next one. This is the Crow side here, and then all that is leading participants. That's what the Little Bighorn monument presents today, is basically the people I just showed you on the soldier side and the native side. Next one. These are just some more pictures here. Speaking, I think that was actually 150th anniversary, the battle I was talking up there. Old postcards there. Next one, please. Okay, that's the cemetery down below, and the building that's coming down is next to that. Next. Okay, that just shows the location. Like I said, the Crows tell a lot of the story of the history. Our people, families didn't see this area in later years. They were now at the Pine Ridge Reservation, Rosebud, Standing Rock, Cheyenne River, and Lower Rule. So we have Ogallala, this nation, Ogallala, Sichangu, Papa, Standing Rock, Minikoju, Sihasapa, Uhueanupa, all that is part of our nation. These are pictures from back in the day. This is the valley here. When this part of the story here is after it's over, I'll kind of conclude with that. But the family went south, where Gary Owen is, again, the Big Horser. They went down adjacent to I-90. They're on the west side. There's an old Indian trail that goes down. They went to Lodgegrass, Montana. So this open field is right by the interstate, and Lodgegrass would be to the right. But they camped in this green meadow the first night, and they buried some of the dead, cared for some of the wounded, and Hump and Crazy Horse were part of this. And so in this overhang cliff, there was archaeological work done there. They actually uncovered a lot of the skulls in this whole area. Eventually farmers did. One of the farmers had several of those, about as far apart as his windows there. He put them on his fence posts, and then they used it for target practice, that generation, you know. And then later they found out, you know, more of the story. So a lot of artifacts were found there directly from the battle itself that were taken in. Soldier buttons, and what they did, they dressed up and played soldier when they left. So there's some real accurate paintings of that after the battle. The younger ones especially, there's pictures, just drawings of them putting soldier pants on and dressing up with the uniform, and got a flag guiding and 2 columns, and they're playing soldier. You know, they're checking all this out, just looking at each other. So that's part of what it looked like when they were leaving. So as they were leaving down there by Gary Owen, there's some noise. It's like they're hollering, "Hey, over here, over here." And here it is. It's some of those of Reno that had dug in and didn't go up there with him. They'd even fire was set down in that area also. But they were down like in their gopher holes hid. and they thought these were soldiers coming in to help them, and they didn't know it was, warriors. So, or warriors had already decided to leave, but they went in there and laid in a few volleys, and they went back to their squirrel holes pretty quick, gopher holes, and so that was part of the story. They continued on, spent the first night here, it's under 20 miles. And on their way, they're following the Bighorn River, goes on down, and then it comes into the Tongue River, and that's the main camp of Hump and Crazy Horse during these decades. That's from about Miles City down to Dayton, the Tongue River. And all of these engagements happen right off the Tongue, and that's where they find him. So anyway, they go on down to Dayton, north of Dayton, to the Tongue. They'll spend a few weeks there, and Crazy Horse will leave. He'll take his group on west, and he'll continue into the Powder River Basin over towards Bear Lodge, Devil's Tower area. And then that fall in September 1876 will be the Battle of Slim Buttes up in northwestern South Dakota. And Crook's over there now, and it sends Anson Mills into an attack. So he comes in on the attack, and by then Hump has come in west also. And so it's the first time since Lodgegrass that Hump and Crazy Horse come together. They come together over there, and they're quite a ways, well, actually a day's ride west of the Battle of Slim Buttes, so they miss out on that. But runners came because that was the camp of Iron Plume. It's history, it's American Horse, but it was Iron Plume. And so they sent word, hey, we need help, but by the time they got there, it's like the books say, the Crooks and Mills were far down. The column was about 4 miles, and some of these new warriors came in and just kind of attacked the south end and gave it up. It's real muddy and foggy, and there's pictures of that. And Crook and Anson Mills, they get lost. They end up over at the Deer's Ears Buttes, which is my uncle's ranch over there. There's still, canteens and stuff, they find over there. And then they steered in the right direction after the fog lifted and went right straight into Deadwood. So they were on a route southeast, and then they turned. So these are actual things that were found in that lodgegrass around the cliffs there. Let's do the next one, a watch. And I'm not sure if I have any more artifacts of that. So let's go forward and see if there's any more. No? I'll stop there. But anyway, the other thing that was found there was a ferrule from the soldiers for the 7th Cavalry banner. So with a wood, part of the wood piece broke off. So they have that. And so then at Slim Buttes, they found a lot of the booty over there from the Little Bighorn. Remember, there's always that picture, and I have it over here, and it's the 7th Cavalry banner was found flying out, the books say, the Lodge of American Horse, Iron Plume. And so I always wondered out there now with some of those guidance, if there's one broke, say, that would fit the other piece. That's part of the detective work, I guess you'd say. So, could I answer any questions? Like I said, there's so many facets of this, and I do have a Little Bighorn National Monument brochure, which has numbers and all that. There were about 260 or so is what they give that were there at the battle killed. Yes.
I was wondering, with the formation of the teepees that it shows on that map, is that fairly accurate?
Well, yeah, it's pretty accurate there, but the tribes are always as accurate. A lot of them said, well, no, we weren't in that location, we were down further. What the maps always have is clearly the Cheyenne on the north, the Minicoju next, and Sichongu, and the Hopapa are always at the south end. That means campers at the end of the circle. But they found a lot of them were up north visiting, and when you gathered first on that Sundance, and those big gatherings, first thing you did was a visit with others. You went to other, you didn't stick so much with your own groups. And then there were some Arapaho in there too. That's the Arapaho connection. They were over there hunting, and by some accounts that I interviewed, people courting as well. And they got caught up in it. It's like, whoa, we're right in the middle of a battle now. So they were, it wasn't like intended. But like with Crooks, he was totally waiting for those Shoshone, and then the Crow people went in. Another thing I wanted to mention that's big news is that our tribe, Benikoju, took 51% interest, and we now own land on the battlefield itself. As of last year, I gave a presentation to the chairman. It's down on Reno Creek on the south end. So my whole program was about, okay, what happened right on this land? In Reno Creek, we're focusing on that. Reno comes in on one side of the creek, Custer's on the other side. He sends Reno to the north to that attack. Another thing that's out there is called the Lone Teepee. That's a story on the south end. Lone Teepee was, as they're coming across from the Rosebud, the Crows, our enemies, observed this. These Lakota, Cheyenne, are at this teepee, and they run them out of there, and they burn the teepee. You know, we're getting our guns and ready. But what they did, that's known to be an Etaza, Joe. It's one of our 7 Lakota. Some of Hump's band were there. So they were having a funeral for the deceased in there from Rosebud. And so, you know, it's a different way to look at it. The Crows burned that and broke that up. And the books would just say, oh, I seen the enemy, and kind of rousted them out of there. The other thing that's right down to the east of that tribal land, and we don't really believe this, but you know, anyway, there's what's called a Crazy Horse petroglyph, or it's a drawing, and it was believed to have he made that after the battle. And you might have seen it. It's a horse, and he's on the horse, and there's a long snake attached, and it's now ruined. It caved in, and it's gone. But in the early '60s, let's see, I knew not Friesen, but the other guy came down here, worked with Jesse Sundstrom and Custer, and Glenn Sween. He's a famous, pretty well-known Wyoming history. And he studied all that. He actually had replicas made of that, and they sold them at museums. But our people say that was a Shoshone thing with that snake on there, you know, the snakes. But others, you'll see more about that. There's some articles coming out that want to say that was Crazy Horses. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions?
Well, I think there's 1 or 2 more, but I'm going to have you talk with them on the way back in order to keep
keep
with
the
the
flow.
program. So please walk back with Donovan, ask your questions.
And you could buy books over here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please,
Yeah.
please take a look.
They are, thank you. And I just want to see the artifacts over there are from northern Nebraska, and I bought that, like I said, back in the day when I was a kid. I took the back off because they put the glass on the front, and then they kind of built it themselves, but they put a newspaper in there. So I have the full newspaper. It's and the Nebraska town, and it was framed and framed then in the 1890s. And there's interesting ads in there. There's even looks like a bicycle on a chair, and looks like Jetsons or something. It's got a propeller up there, and it's a woman's hair dryer. So